Welcome to the Media Genius Podcast presents The Deep End. Today's episode, Event Horizon.
So we're good.
I'm gonna do a clap, so then when you're looking later, I can edit it.
Sure.
There we go.
I'm gonna keep that in.
I'm sure we'll have some outtakes from this one.
Oh, good.
So welcome back to the Media Genius Podcast presents The Deep End. Last time, Dan and I discussed 2020's fantastic Lovecraftian-esque Underwater and decided, during the last moments of that episode, that this episode will be Event Horizon. So let's go. After the quick reintroduction, I'm Shawn. I'm a writer and content producer with a new superhero novel coming. And that's Dan somewhere. I can't remember which direction to point to.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter. I'm on the screen, opposite of Shawn. I'm a guitar player in Bring Out Your Dead. I also am a content creator here with the Media Genius Podcast. And you could probably look forward to an EP release from my band sometime this year, maybe. Who knows?
They're pretty awesome. Also, in the description on YouTube, at the very least, there'll be the links, and at some point, we'll have an actual link tree set up, so you guys can go and check out things like the Patreon, the YouTube, the Twitter, the Facebook, and the website. More content is incoming. Again, we're still getting towards the end of battling pandemic nonsense. In case this was not obvious enough, spoilers, here we go. Here we go into the deep end, 1997's Event Horizon.
Yes. In case this wasn't obvious, spoilers.
If you don't want spoilers, it's time to get out of the pool. And we'll get better at that.
Maybe. Who knows?
In terms of Event Horizon, Paul W.S. Anderson, the acclaimed director of schlocky horror and the not quirky director of quirky watercolor paletted dramas, gives us his vision of the horrors of space and time. The ship Event Horizon, designed to travel by bending space-time and circumventing the traditional speed limit that is the speed of light, has returned after disappearing during its maiden test voyage. A team is sent to find out what's happened, where it might have been, and what happened to the now disappeared crew. This is another film that pays homage to the Alien franchise, and this film also works in elements from Lovecraft and the other modern master of eldritch and unknowable horror, Clive Barker.
So in the year 2047, a distress signal is received from the starship Event Horizon, which disappeared on its maiden voyage to Proxima Centauri 7 years prior. The rescue vessel, Lewis and Clark, its crew, and Dr. William Weir, father of the Event Horizon project, head out to investigate the suddenly returned and now derelict ship. Dr. Weir explains to the crew that what they have been told about the Event Horizon is false. The ship was not initially destroyed, and that the recovery of the ship's gravity drive, designed and built by Weir, is of the utmost importance. The only clue to what happened to the ship is a brief recording on which a Latin phrase can be heard. We all know how Latin phrases work in horror movies. The crew and Dr. Weir begin to hallucinate after discovering the remains of the previous crew, and the movie and its visuals take a horrific turn.
Yeah, so basically, we'll get into going into the movie, but like, Act 1, hey, let's go do a space thing. Act 2 and 3, oh, that's awful. Yeah. In terms of its, reception, it had, just mixed reviews and terrible critical reviews. Some people liked watching this movie, some people didn't. If you were a critic, you basically hated it. Event Horizon is also a box office flop, although it did gain a cult following. And actually, there is a possible upcoming reboot TV series. Was that Netflix, Dan, or Amazon?
I think it was Amazon.
Amazon. They've been talking about it since 2017, so fingers crossed for me.
I think that's like mostly on the back burner. Definitely not a back burner because of COVID thing. Mostly a back burner because of no traction thing.
Yeah, because let's be real.
I mean, this is the kind of movie they did test screenings and like people passed out. So yeah. We'll see.
We will get to talking about those original screenings, though. Now, this movie we have to admit, has incredible set designs and incredible production designs. The set designs pull from varied resources. The ship's interior itself is inspired very clearly by the Notre Dame Cathedral. The drive itself, if you go back to the drive clip,
let me pull that up.
Very similar in look to the Lament configuration, which is the puzzle box from the Hellraiser franchise. Fun story. Usually we do Easter eggs at the end, but this movie's basically like horror Easter egg the movie. Turns out Clive Barker consulted on the early production of this movie, so it makes sense that looks like the Lynette configuration. The film has stood the test of time a lot better than it launched. I feel like this movie is looked at either not as a masterpiece, but as a much better movie now than during its initial run in the theater by a lot. Like,
Oh, yeah, I think it
just,
can definitely be well appreciated now as opposed to when it was released and when it was initially received by
yeah.
audiences.
We talked a bit about the alien homages. We have that sort of claustrophobia. We have that space stuff. Dan has some interesting references that I am less familiar with.
Yeah. So you can read about this, online on the wiki page. It's where I actually learned about it initially. The movie and the director have stated that a lot of the inspiration for what goes on and how the movie progresses it uh, are linked to the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So if you're not well versed in Warhammer 40,000, it was initially released as a tabletop game with miniatures. It is a battle for humanity type thing against demons, against Xenos, and what I think is even funnier is like the Tyranid army, which could very easily just be like, oh, that is alien, that is xenomorph just plopped onto a tabletop board game. In this movie, I think we get a look at what could be referred to as the powers of chaos and the warp, and so in 40K, the humans, the Space Marines, move around and transport themselves by opening up black holes and traveling through the warp, which is essentially what we're told is happening in this movie. So lots of Warhammer 40K fans kind of see this movie as a prequel to humans stumbling across the warp and the powers of chaos and being infected by those demons. And so we see the progress of that happen in this movie, and you can draw those parallels to the 40K universe.
So in the movie, Sam Neill wears the Australian flag patch, and they've replaced the Union Jack with the Aboriginal flag, which is something people want to do today. Like, it's always up for discussion, and they're probably going to do it at some point. And it's just really interesting that, like, during this horror movie, they decided to add a piece of like social awareness and some like, hey, like, this makes sense. We should be doing this.
Like they finally got
Sam
it right in the
Neill,
future.
yeah, Sam Neill specifically requested it. He said, "Listen, if I'm going to wear this Australian patch, it has to have the Aboriginal flag instead." I have never seen him actually say it out loud to confirm it, but that is
That's
doesn't
the
feel like
story.
a Hollywood myth story. Does that make sense? Like, he's never come out and said he didn't say that. So, and I hear it a lot when talking about this movie and flag representation in movies in general, which is a weird subtopic I enjoy. So, I really like that this movie, like Alien, touches on claustrophobia. All the ship's interiors are small. Everything has that sort of feels like a submarine interior, but also it has a weird agoraphobia thing, sort of like the vastness of space and time and dimensions, and sort of the horror with coming to know that there's so much more out there, even if you're experiencing it in such a small personal way. Like it's Eldritch horrors, strong enough for the galaxy, but tailored for you kind of idea, and the lament configuration idea. Um, I'm much more familiar with Hellraiser than Dan. Don't watch those movies. Do watch those movies. I can't recommend them, but I enjoy them. But I don't enjoy them. It's a weird thing. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. When you hear the word Hellraiser, you think, oh, at some point I might poop myself during this movie, and you do. Maybe if you're small, I don't anymore. Maybe when I was little, I watched them far too early in my life. Um, Pandora's box, sort of like the idea that man has done a thing that has unleashed stuff it didn't intend, or did intend, but not in such an awful way. Like the gravity drive is, it opens up a portal to uh
Dimensions unknown.
badness.
It's
But
it's it's like
in this case, it opened it up to badness,
yes,
which is bad.
badness. It very possibly could have opened up to ponies, sunshine, and angels, but we didn't get that version of the movie. And
What you're saying is like it could have a wrinkle in time as well.
yeah, oh well, I guess in this case and in pretty much every case is And I'm gonna butcher the Jeff Goldblum quote, but like, you never stopped to think it like if you could rather than if you should, right? So they
Yeah.
went forward with this idea like we can do this, we can make infinite travel possible. Who cares what's on the other side of the door? We'd have infinite travel, but
Yeah.
that didn't work out for this movie, and as it doesn't work out for nearly
Yeah.
anyone else.
This is also a movie that begins with an exposition dump, this time in text. Um, I really have to ask, is this really a trope now for horror and fantasy movies where you need to have the world building done in a short amount of time or people lose their minds? Because I can only think of one recent sci-fi, fantasy, or horror movie that doesn't do this world dump building at the very beginning, and everyone crapped on it for not doing any world building. And
Well,
it's really the only problem I think people found with it was that the world building was not good.
but what
Bright
movie?
on Netflix.
I didn't have
Bright.
any issues with Bright. I enjoyed it.
So I love Bright, and I'm glad they're making more of them. That said, a lot of people's complaints about Bright are that, oh, the world building isn't there. And I'm like, they didn't have a giant exposition dump? It's the only thing that's missing. Like, you could have like a 5-minute portion at the beginning that explains the world with a voiceover, like, and go intensely into it. But I felt like it was built enough during the thing where I didn't care about like whatever possible weird inconsistencies you might find.
Yeah. See,
Uh,
here's my thing about like the expositional dump world building kind of thing.
yeah,
And in a lot of cases, I would find it necessary where you have to kind of catch the viewer up to where you want them to be to instead of them catching up during key important early moment things, they do all of that and then they're in the seat experiencing the movie. I don't think
yeah,
Bright has that issue because Bright is just, I mean, like on top of the fantasy sci-fi elements of Bright, it's just like an allegory for race, and I think most people can kind
yeah,
of pick up on that right away without an
yeah,
expositional dump. Like, do I need to explain
yeah,
to you that there are orcs and fairies? Like, no, you can kind of just pick that one up. But
yeah. I guess overly sarcastic productions. They're on YouTube. Red does one about Bright, kind of in particular about allegories for race and how Bright was really clumsy about it. And I agree that as allegories for straight up race, it was kind of clumsy. But we need to remember that fantasy worlds tend to be like planets of hats where like every orc is this, every elf is this. So like it was kind of okay for me. Like I didn't try to think of it as like a real life allegory for race like District 9 was.
oh, of course, I
I
didn't
thought of
view it
it
that way
as a
either.
yeah, which is uh maybe there's a huge spectrum of literary criticism, and I'm on the let's try to enjoy this for what it is literary criticism side.
Mm.
And that's apparently not a huge side of literary criticism.
It
It,
kind of goes against the key word in that phrase being criticism. I'm
hey,
gonna enjoy
criticism
this for what it is, minus the
criticism can be
criticism.
constructive.
Yeah, well,
That said, while we're talking about non-expositional openings, it occurred to me. Sorry, Dan, I interrupted
oh
you.
no,
Do you
no,
want
go
to
ahead.
finish your thought?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't really a thought.
The best sci-fi movie with no expositional opening and almost no exposition at all, if you watch the final cut, is Blade Runner. If they take out Harrison Ford's stupid voiceovers that he hates, and I hate, Ridley Scott hates, everyone hates, except the producers did like them. Well, anyway, moving
So
on.
it sounds like a studio ad.
Yeah.
Wonder where else studios have fucked up movies.
Ooh, this one. Ooh. But
Mm.
but Blade Runner tells its all of its exposition by the fact that they'll just fly around in the spinners across the city, and you would take it all in. And all these scenes feel like they're way too long, but it's giving you like this is LA, and they don't have to explain anything because they showed it to you. It is the perfect show don't tell. I love Blade Runner. Shout out to Adam Savage, who also loves Blade Runner.
Yeah, yeah.
Anywho, back to Event Horizon. Wait.
Well, no, no, no.
Sorry.
I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it back. But
Okay,
like
okay.
staying on the expositional dump, I think
Mm.
something. I don't think Event Horizon truly needed an expositional dump. Now, the way I read into the expositional dump was very still in the manner of 40K. So like when 40K Warhammer 40,000 does show you things, they do the standard title card, which is like the grim dark world of the near future is something something chaos blah blah blah. I'm not going to get into it.
Hmm.
And they very easily could have just stuck with one sentence, because basically all of the text they put in front of you is told to you by Dr. Weir when you're introduced to the crew. So like we get all of that exposition as actual exposition. So I don't know if it was 100% necessary this case.
So I think it was a studio ad, which goes to the fact that the studio destroyed this movie.
Well, they certainly didn't help it.
Okay. The studio made this movie not Paul W.S. Anderson's vision, which would have been a more complete vision and movie, even if it would have been more disgusting, more horrific, and more terrifying.
Yeah.
But it would have been the complete vision.
Yeah.
And that's what they ruined. They ruined the complete vision. Yeah. The initial cut of this movie was NC-17 because the studio had them cut out enough to make sure it wasn't X originally. Let's go into the movie. Let's talk about the movie now for a minute.
Sure.
We'll talk about the studio stuff and we'll come back to this other. The ephemera on this movie. This, like I said, this movie is horror Easter egg the movie, because everything in this movie can be talked about in such minute detail, from 40K to Lovecraft to creators losing control of their creations to the effects to everything about this movie is great except the movie. To a lot of people, I enjoy it, but I understand the not enjoying. So let's talk about the movie. We talked about the beginning. Event Horizon goes away. Event Horizon comes back. The guy who made the movie, who made it, Dr. Weir, played by the fantastic Sam Neill, who we'll talk about at length later, goes with the crew. They go to it. The crew's led by Lawrence Fishburne, who is just kind of amazing and all over the place. I talk about him a lot later as well. They show up, they get to the Event Horizon, and we're caught up to where we were in the beginning of this video.
Yes. So, oh no, did you want me to like just explain the rest of what goes on here?
Oh, let's try to do it in little parts because it goes sideways pretty quick.
Yeah, it does. I think so. Like, what ends up happening next is they're slowly discovering what happens to the crew. They're finding the remains, frozen, mutilated bodies floating in space, just like Art Deco human, just like pasted on the wall.
Yeah. I think it's actually more. Wow, I'm gonna nerd really hard here for a second.
All right.
Basque. It's Basque. It's like post-Gothic but pre-modern.
No, I just meant like like what? Is it stucco ceilings? You know what I'm talking about? Like where they use the.
Yeah.
It's just that with humans against the walls.
Yeah, so it's a particular art style. It's Basque. It's like what the Notre Dame Cathedral is in, and just after it's pre-Gothic, post-Gothic. I can never remember. It's Gothic and Basque are like at the same time, and one of them has a different kind of vaulted ceiling, but the one with the points, it's Basque. Whatever.
Oh no, I'm exclusively referring to like the human remains they find pasted up on the wall like a paper mache human sculpture.
Yeah, the way that's done is Basque.
Oh, okay, I understand. Gotcha.
Yes, to match and contrast the architecture of the horror demons in this were like spot on. They're like, ooh, this is designed like this. Let's put up our mutilated bodies to be complementary. No, seriously, like they also speak awesome Latin, which we didn't look up the phrase.
Oh yeah, no, I can get the phrase up for us.
Okay, sorry, I forgot to grab it.
No, it's fine. I got it. So the phrase is.
While Dan's speaking.
Oh, it only gives me the translation. That's less fun. Oh, it's so what is heard on the recording by Jason Isaacs, another great actor who isn't a bad guy for once, right? You'd think immediately, oh, Jason Isaacs, bad guy, sure. Nope, not this time. He hears Liberate Met or something me or Liberate me, which he translates to liberate me or save me.
Yes.
We eventually, he spends more time with the recording as the crew is hallucinating and experiencing these things, and he comes up with the addendum to that translation, which is liberate tutte me ex infernus, which I don't know how you miss a whole 2 words on the end, but that ends up being save yourself from hell.
Right. So it was the save us at first, and then it like breaks down. But it's that first beginning part that he messes up. That's the big one. Because save us from hell would be like, oh man, they're having a bad time. Our ship's decompressing. Oh no, and I'm so dramatic. Save yourself from hell is probably like a, oh okay, the event horizon. Can we push that into the sun? Like, is there a way to just into
Like,
the
just push that one off.
No.
Bombs destroyed.
Yeah.
Any possibilities? That's like right when the shit starts to hit the fan, one of the crew guys is like, there's no way I'm getting on that bastard. We don't even know what happened to it. And Dr. Weir's like, well, it beats dying. And me, the viewer, rolling my eyes as hard as I can. No, it doesn't beat dying.
No, having seen this before, I know that that's not necessarily better than dying.
Yeah.
In the moment, you might think that it would be.
Yo, yeah. Well,
I don't know.
Do you
I don't know.
necessarily expect space demons on your first, go? Maybe not.
Oh yes. If a ship disappears into another dimension and comes back, and the distress message is in Latin, I expect space demons. That's what I expect.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, for me and anyone else who's seen any horror movie, the first sign of a Latin phrase on a recording with screaming in addition to the Latin phrase, that is a turn it around and leave it for another crew moment. Like, I am all set.
Like, if I went out to get to grab like my Amazon box, and as the guy was walking down the stairs, he was whistling and saying Latin phrases, I'm going to leave the box there, go inside, call a priest.
Call a priest, yeah.
Yeah. So we got people up on the walls. People start going crazy. I don't necessarily want to spoil all the imagery of their going craziness, but it's pretty good. What happens to Dr. Weir? At one point, they need to fix a part of the event horizon because it's a guidance thing. Blah blah blah. An excuse to get into a catacomb, like a lit crawl space to go change a thing.
Oh yeah.
And like when his dead wife shows up, no eyes, and he's just like, oh god, it's so good.
Oh, hold on.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
I'm freaking myself out. I'm gonna go close the door now. If you couldn't tell, I don't like scary movies.
Yeah, I don't know how I convinced Dan to watch this. Like, I totally forgot that like he just didn't like this movie, and I'm like, let's do it better.
I don't think it's that I forgot that I didn't like this movie. I remembered that I didn't.
Forgot.
Oh, you forgot. Okay.
I would have never been like, let's do Event Horizon.
Oh no, I'm fine with doing Event Horizon, especially because I had already seen it. The whole story. I'm gonna go off track here because it's a fun story for me. A college roommate of mine, Spencer.
Yeah.
We were looking for a movie to watch. We like could not sleep. It was already late at night. And we had I think one of the movies we had just watched was Jurassic Park. We were like, oh yeah, let's see what else Sam Neill is in. He's good. And we saw Sam Neill. Oh, space movie, Event Horizon. This sounds good. Click. And 3 a.m. rolls around. We're hiding under our covers. We shouldn't have watched this.
The other Sam Neill movie you shouldn't have watched at that time would have been The Mouth of Madness, which at some point we need to watch and talk about the Apocalypse trilogy.
Oh yeah, it'll happen.
The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and Mouth of Madness.
All John Carpenter.
Also, you should watch Lord of Illusion, the Clive Barker movie. Actually, real good.
Okay.
That's a real good movie that's not necessarily spoopy.
I can take not necessarily spoopy. I'll take that.
Yeah, less spoopy than Event Horizon.
Oh, then I definitely can handle that. We were just at the peak level of spoopy where I could deal with it with Event Horizon.
Yeah. Don't watch Hellraiser. That's simple. No. We'll come back around to that at some point. So it turns out that the demons that live in the dimension that you go to when you use the gravity drive on the Event Horizon, the one that looks like the Hellraiser puzzle box, managed to infect the ship, ? And then manages to infect some of the people, not ?
Yeah,
because it really does infect Weir definitely affects Weir. It influences some of the others, but I feel like it gets in him.
Yeah, I think it really does like take control of Weir the most, whereas it's
Mm,
just like basically manipulating everybody
yeah,
else. I think
I
the
feel like his. Oh,
oh
you
no,
you first.
we're really bad at this. I think my thing is I think it was so easily able to infect Weir because Weir wanted to save the ship initially.
And I
And
think his
even when shit
desperation for
started to hit the
saving the
fan.
ship.
Yeah.
Oh, his desperation for saving the ship really had a lot to do with the fact that when he was gone on his space missions, his wife killed herself. You know?
Any chance to redeem himself and save his wife seems reasonable, I think, to him.
Yeah. Or really, like, this is the reason my wife is dead, and I put my heart and soul into this. This needs to be successful or needs to
Meaningful.
be meaning. That's the word, meaningful. And it turns out that a demon and sadomasochistic sort of hell dimension can give you meaning, question mark. I say again, question mark.
Well, I certainly think it gives somebody meaning, but not me.
No, I guess if you were that desperate, I could never imagine being that desperate where I would be like, yeah, infect me. Let's do this to all the Earth. Yeah. In any case, as the movie rolls down, Lawrence Fishburne's character, whose name I can never remember because he's Lawrence Fishburne in every movie. Like even when he's Morpheus, I'm like, hey,
Uh,
Lawrence Fishburne.
it's Captain Miller.
Thank you.
Yep.
Captain Miller decides we're going to blow the ship up, and then the ship says,
Nah,
"How about
fuck you.
no?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, just like shit stops working and things start blowing up and awesome.
Like literally immediately.
Yeah, just he says it and the ship is like, nah, bro, nah, I'm good,
It's
got you.
like not even a 2 second pause between him saying we're gonna blow up the ship and the ship being like, nah.
Yeah, the ship manages to somehow blow up the other ship. I guess with weird moving one of the bombs. It's unclear.
Oh, I thought that was pretty easy to follow. Weir takes one of the bombs from the
Yeah.
uh the long the elongated deck there, which separates like the life capsule from the drive in case of an emergency. He takes one of those
Hmm.
bombs, puts it in the Lewis and Clark, which is their original rescue vessel, blows that up so nobody can escape, killing one person, two people, one person.
Yeah. Here's the weird part, and this is one of the things they point out sometimes. Of the two things that I see pointed out, the timing of that is really weird.
Why is
For him
that?
to get from where he from him to get where he was supposed to be to where he needed to be and back was wonky, like almost too close. That said, we might have missed some parts that got cut out and lost in a salt mine in Transylvania, which is what happened to some of the film for some reason.
Yeah.
The other part that people get on, and me and you talked about this earlier, um, there's a floating, so it's totally frozen. Bodies are frozen, everything's frozen, gravity's off.
Yeah, the ship is in a
All
deep
right.
cold or whatever they call it.
And there's a bottle floating through a water bottle with sloshing liquid in it. And a lot of people were upset about it, but apparently it's a bottle filled with vodka, and that's canon. I went and looked some more,
Because
and
that was
I
one of
don't
my
know
notes
why.
too.
Yes,
Yeah,
right?
like I
Because
caught
it's
it and I
so
was like, oh, that
obvious.
because it I think it's so obvious because like they enter the ship and Captain Miller's like, oh, the ship's in a deep freeze. And then the very next thing it cuts to them walking into the ship, the bottle floating by with slushing noise and it's just like, but it was in a
Yeah.
deep freeze, guys. What did you miss?
My guess, if I were to guess, based on how much this movie is missing, and the way that if you were to hear the recording or it would sound like a party kind of weird party orgy that turns into weird party murder orgy. Um, Maybe that was supposed to be like a party got out of hand question mark. Yeah, you spray people along the wall like that, but like this is a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil. Like he does good stuff. Like I really enjoy his movies, but like sometimes they get like a little wacky. Anyway, so we get to the end of the movie. Boom, we get some blowing up. We have some stuff. We have what's an amazing amount of special effects where Weir and Miller get to confront each other over uh, Miller's personal horror, where he had to let some people die in a space capsule one day and
Mm.
burn to death. And then we get the uh, not quite M. Night Shyamalan twist ending, which I think you explained better than me.
Oh yeah. So what ends up happening is, in my opinion, the two people that look the least likely to make it to the end up surviving, which is kind of refreshing when you don't expect someone to make it. Like, oh, these are kind of just the two throwaway crew members. They'll die. Blah blah blah. Maybe the main characters live. They don't do that necessarily. These two make it
I
to
have a
the end.
theory.
They put themselves into stasis, so that they can travel back towards Earth in a very every sci-fi movie ending fashion, especially Alien. Like Ripley gets into the pod. She gets discovered later. So they get discovered an amount of time later. They come out of the pod, and the woman, who is Peters, she's the one of the medical techs. Uh, she is like, she falls down on the ground. She's pulled up by one of the rescue people, and the mask flips up, and it's Dr. Weir with his all mutilated demon face looking crap going, and like she freaks out and then wakes back up, and that was a dream. But then, as we see her being comforted by one of the other surviving crew members, one of the rescue, I think it was Cooper, uh, the camera starts to pan back, and then the door closes on them and the actual rescue team. So, it's implied there that like, did they make it? Did they not make it? And after doing some thinking about it and some reading into it, it's my opinion at least that they didn't make it. And it gets really down to detailing, and it really could have just been like we missed something in the edit where Peters sees Dr. Weir when his face is all messed up like that. But in the movie, Peters and Weir don't interact after he goes full demon flesh ripped up mode. So the fact that she is seeing a demonized Weir can be extruded to the point where like they didn't make it, or at least it followed them, or like really just messed them up and infected them. So I think in the end they're done. They're fucked.
Yeah. Which means likely Earth is effed, unless they just decide to yeet these guys into the sun, which was my option earlier.
Yes.
So I have a theory of why the two make it at the end that we didn't expect to. And it's going to boil down to they were the least interesting, which means that they had the least backstory, they had
That's
the
true.
least focus, they had the least things to be desperate about. They were
Yeah.
probably actually the least interesting in life. And it felt like the demonic entities, the alien entities, the dimensional entities, whatever they are, really needed that sort of almost vampires need you to invite them in kind of thing.
Mm.
And these guys just they had so much less to invite them in about.
No, less inner
Had they
demons.
stayed, yeah, ooh, less inner demons. I like that.
Less inner demons to turn
Had
into real demons, I suppose, is the way the rest of the movie
yeah,
looks, right?
yeah, but had they had a chance to stay on the event horizon longer, it probably still would have been bad for them. Like just time of exposure.
Mm-hmm.
That also explains why Captain Miller was able to overcome the demons so much, because he had already overcome his demons so many times.
Yeah.
He's willing to face them, whereas a lot of people run from them. And when you're running from something, you can get caught. When you face something, you either fight it and lose, or you fight it and win.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's actually just going through, like, if we could just like kind of dissect each person's kind of end there. We
yeah,
see. So the first person to be really truly affected is one of the engineers, the young kid there, Justin.
hmm
We don't know of any like internal demons, we'll call them, like just like personal
yeah,
problems, right? We don't know of any internal demons he's facing, but he gets sucked into the drive and then spit back out. So really, I think that's like the truest corruption or infection that happens to any of the crew
yeah.
members outside of Weir. He ends up just going straight up
Oh, you're
crazy.
sad.
Oh, and your camera paused. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties? Can you hear me? Oh, I'm frozen. Oh, I'm frozen in such a way where, like, you can't even see me. What's happening? Yeah, all right, I'm right here. Hold on.
Slight technical problem there, but we fixed it. So
Wow.
Justin gets
Oh,
infected.
TLDR, not sponsored. I have Spectrum Internet, and sometimes that just happens. It's a feature.
You're telling
Not
me they
sponsored,
didn't.
not sponsored.
You're telling me they didn't sponsor that one?
No, that is unsponsored content right there, guys.
Okay.
Hold on. I think the rest of the people in my house are telling me the internet went down. Is what's happening. Let's just go and see what that is all about.
I do think we're back up though, because I can hear you.
All right,
your video works. Oh,
so the last thing I heard was Justin went into the thing. So
Yeah.
let's just start off from there. Justin goes into the drive, and then
So Justin goes into the drive. He comes back out. He is just downright infected with terror, right? He is terrified of what he has seen and what he has felt and experienced, and he tries to meet his own end by ending his life by shooting himself out of an airlock into space, which in my opinion is the coolest sequence in the movie. But
yes, talk more about that right now, because I know you have a lot to say.
Okay, so when I initially saw the movie for the first time with my buddy Spencer, we both pointed at the screen and went, "No, wrong!" But we were wrong, because actually it's kind of more representative of what happens when you get sucked into space. I guess in my mind, there were movies that you ended up in space and you were like a frozen block of ice immediately and dead. And I thought that was right. And really, the Event Horizon kind of, it's not accurate because it's a movie, but it is more true to what may happen if you experience the decompression and the endless void of space, just right on your flesh.
Yeah. And you have to make sure that you empty your lungs. You don't hold your breath. If you hold your breath, you pop.
Yes, boom, gone.
Yeah.
So if you ever find yourself being ejected into space, if you ever find yourself being ejected into space, breathe out.
Around here we call that a Thursday. So
yeah. So he's the first. We see him. Like I said, we don't see any internal demons. He gets sucked in. He's dealt with. But then we start getting that Lovecraftian backstory telling through not telling. With in the beginning, Dr. Weir's looking at his pictures of his wife. We obviously know something has happened because he says he misses her, and then we find out later through his visions. At some point halfway through the movie, Captain Miller is talking about how he lost a man who ended up being trapped in a fire, and that ends up being his internal demon, and that is manifested in the end. We see who was it? Peters, the medical technician. She sees, and we see actually some of her backstory through pictures in that Lovecraftian manner of storytelling, where we see her child in visions is in a wheelchair, and she is being regretful of not being there for her kid, and that ends up being what's manifested for her and what ends up getting her. And then DJ, the medical doctor, Jason Isaacs, he actually doesn't have any demons that we see really either, and he just gets straight up killed by Dr. Weir. So anyone who we don't see that internal struggle or internal demon for gets straight up killed by the demons, and anyone that has a way to weasel their way into their mind, the demon goes for the infection route.
Yeah, which makes sense. You're taking out the immune system, which is the
mind,
people of purity.
Yeah. So I thought that's a really interesting look at who it attacks and how it gets attacked.
So then we come back to, while we're talking about themes, I feel like this one has a huge theme of creators losing control of their creations, or somehow coming under the control of their creations. Flatliners, that whole technology, they lose control of, and it starts controlling them. Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde, the Invisible Man. It's a great horror trope.
Jurassic Park.
And yes, what is it? Nature finds a way.
Oh yeah, life finds a way. Well, in this case, demons find a way, but it's all the same.
Demons find a way. The anti-life equation finds the way.
It's a movie. It all finds a way.
So, are there any themes we missed? Claustrophobia, agoraphobia, eldritch horrors, personal eldritch horrors. I think we covered the major themes. Also, getting you to try and poop yourself, which is that's a theme. That's a theme. Yeah, theme.
Well, I mean, it sure is for Anderson. Getting
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone in the test screening actually pooped themselves. Most of them
Yeah, people
fainted.
passed out. Yeah.
Straight up. And I think that's where the studio ended up stepping in, right, Sean?
Yes. So this movie's original cut was about 35 minutes longer.
So like a 2-hour movie.
Yep. Because this is a very short movie.
Yeah, it's like straight up 90 minutes. It's an easy
Yeah.
watch for lengthwise.
Yes.
Not for anything
So
else.
it's about 35 minutes longer. Apparently there was even more footage that was cut. So there's that whole video sequence, the weird the other dimension, let's call it, so we don't get struck down for saying awful things. That whole scene, there's like 15 to 17 minutes of that they shot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is awful. They brought in just bear with for a moment. They brought in amputees and porn stars and the horror effects artists and said, "Go buck wild." Essentially, it was crazy. It was bad. It was over the top. It was too much. It was the original vision. I would like to have seen it, if only because I feel like this movie needs the original vision. Almost all this footage is gone. This was back when they were recording on film. They didn't do proper archival. This was right before DVDs really became a thing. They weren't doing extra features. Some of this film ended up, like I said earlier, in a salt mine in Transylvania, just destroyed. They were storing film in a salt mine for reasons. Like,
Who knows?
also the studio probably said, like, we should send this to the Vatican and have them bless it and then store it in a salt mine under Dracula's castle. Like, really, it was bad stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like the really only way
disturbing.
to store it.
Yeah, it does. You know, put it in a lead coffin and send it to the future.
Apparently, there is an original version or an original cut of the movie that exists. It's on tape.
Yes.
One of the editors has it, and they've talked about just like watching it sometime, like the editor and like other people who did the editing, and they talked about being able to, like, we'll sit down and watch it. They just haven't gotten around to that. I don't see a director's cut or a re-release ever really being produced from the original content. Like we said, like even the remake series from Amazon is like pretty much dead in the water currently. So I don't think we'll see any additional content for Event Horizon, but it does exist. It's not destroyed.
Apparently it's rough cut. Like, it's not great footage. It's not full special effects. It's a rough cut. But that said, we live in the world of incredible CGI technology. This rough cut could easily become real deal. That said, I think I'm over wanting to see it. At this point, it would be like just wanting to watch a train wreck. You know what I mean? Like, we know what it would have been, and if it had been that originally, it would have been worth seeing. But I don't need to go and be disturbed on purpose.
Yeah. I think that's where I am too. I don't think I would need to see the footage to really understand what the footage would have meant for the movie. You do,
and I have enough.
You really do get
of
like
it.
like little tiny little frames of flashes of that truly disgusting gore, fear factor in the movie itself. And I don't think I need another like 20 minutes of it. I don't know.
Now that's it. I could deal with having the soundtrack be all over the place because the soundtrack is amazing.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the soundtrack.
Yeah, Michael came in, who I'll let Dan nerd out about in a minute, and Orbital, who I love Orbital, came together and created a really pleasing soundtrack in a very pleasing way. If being creeped out is pleasing to you, it's diegetic, it's very techno, it's very house music, it's very orchestral, it's very its own special kind of late 90s sci-fi horror soundtrack nonsense, but it's great. And Michael Kamen is amazing because
Michael Kamen is amazing because he is the master of blending genres. Because if anyone can take orchestral music and mix it with Metallica, it's Michael Kamen. The maestro himself from Metallica's original S&M performances. Michael Kamen, in conjunction with Metallica, wrote all of the orchestral music for the S&M release. So when I saw his name pop up on the screen, I immediately got excited. I was already pretty intrigued with the sounds we were getting. It started off very electronic, which I think we've sort of found a return to. You know, like we started with Alien, where it's like straight up orchestral, and we were talking about the similarities between Alien and Underwater's soundtracks, where Underwater emulates the orchestral sounds with electronic sounds. And then, you know, now we have Space EDM Orchestra, which,
Yes.
you know, saying that kind of just sounds disgusting, but it works for this movie. It
does.
It's remarkable.
You know, Vangelis did a great job doing it for, you know, the first Blade Runner. Hans Zimmer was able to really replicate it for Blade Runner 2049. I really like this. I'm a huge fan of 90s techno and EDM and industrial to begin with. I really like Northern European house music, like Faithless and the early Dido stuff and kind of things. I'm a nerd. I loved this. That said, Michael Kamen's career, if he'd worked significantly with a director who was also very talented, he's got awards, his career's spanning, it's amazing. But like, unlike John Williams, who had Spielberg and had Lucas, or unlike Danny Elfman, who had Tim Burton, Michael Kamen didn't have like a particular director he worked with a lot. Michael Mann he worked with, you know, but he didn't. There wasn't like that partnership of these two geniuses all the time. So I feel like he gets overlooked in soundtrack land a lot. Ennio Morricone, these are all guys in this discussion, like, and he should be in it.
I agree. I
think John Williams is the king. Ennio Morricone has some claims to that too. John Williams pulls stuff from earlier score writers. It's
John. For me, there's no contest. But like, even just removing Star Wars out of the musical equation, there, just from the sheer, like, literally everything else still puts him at the top for me, at least.
There's a really good video from Cinefix about a lot of the motifs that he. It's orchestra music, it's symphony music. They borrow motifs. A lot of the motifs we hear John Williams use are borrowed from earlier filmmakers, and it's really interesting when you hear them side by side. It wasn't a critique. It's just that he was a genius of adding, creating, and mixing. He was a DJ, an MC.
Yeah, an orchestral DJ.
Yeah, so, but all these guys need to be in the discussion of like, who do you want to do your movie? Depends what kind of a movie you're making. You know?
Yeah. Did we want to talk about CGI and just general effects?
Yeah, I think that's the last thing we really have to hit before we do some reviewing.
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, one of the more enjoyable parts of the movie was its use of practical and CG effects, particularly in a few different instances. So, you know, we see the popsicle person, as I referred to him. So it's like that corpse in the beginning of the movie that's frozen solid, floating around for the jump scares. They turn the gravity on, it falls and shatters into a million pieces. Can't exactly tell where the line of practical and CG is on that. And I think that is what makes it good. Because if you can't tell what's what, it's tricking your mind into believing it's something else. And that is what the goal is there with effects. And so I thought that was a very interesting effect. They do some full CG models of the ships where, you know, Star Wars was the pioneer of using miniatures and camera movements to really create that, you know, in space look. They are full CG models of these ships. The movement they have to do is nothing spectacular. So it can kind of just be in the environment, but it is still impressive to have a model of that in a space and work with that.
So it turns out those are post replacements. They built miniatures and shot them with a motion control rig, and it turns out the miniatures they built didn't have enough detail.
Wow.
So they did a post replace, which implies to me that they built real miniatures and not bigatures. So my guess is the ship was probably built to be tabletop size instead of being 12 feet long. Star Wars was great at using bigatures. Like the original A New Hope Millennium Falcon is 8 feet, isn't it? Or
Yeah,
12 feet? It's huge.
oh yeah, I mean, like it's not anywhere near the size of what it should be, but it's big enough where you
Yeah.
can still see the small details.
Yeah, they built this with miniatures instead, like real miniatures instead of bigatures, which
Yep.
is um honestly, there was a featurette that shows the miniatures. They're decent. They're not bad. They're just like not anywhere near as good as the CG models, which is saying something for 97. Like this was good.
Yeah,
That opening
definitely a
scene with the
turning
ship
point.
was a third of their budget.
Yep. But I mean, like
Um,
for someone who's watching the movie and appreciates that, like that is awesome.
also, I got permission from Sarah to try and build a dice reflex. So if you ever, at
What's
some point, you'll have to come over.
all right.
The motion control rig from Star Wars.
Oh,
Yes, you can build home versions of that motion control rig using
Let-
an Arduino and some 8020.
let's do that.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to use it for. I just want to build it just to say I did.
To make obviously the test run is I take a model of one of my Star Wars miniatures and we fly it around. Obviously,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
one of the other really impressive ones was the floating sort of anamorphous liquid effect. Not only did it interact with people, so like people would move through it, people would hit it, and it would separate and move in a believable way for liquid in zero grav, right? Like
Yeah.
if you see the people up on the space station are like drinking little water balls that float and they're very like that. And yeah, exactly. So they model that and it's full CG and it's pretty impressive. The reflectiveness of it is also pretty impressive. And then
Yeah.
when they move to, they turn the gravity on at some point and it all falls, that's all real, dark liquid that they're just dropping from above. And the transition there makes it more believable, like on the back half of things.
Yeah.
And then
You were
I
talking
think,
about the Abyss and being really good at that. And I feel like the Abyss was created and animated, like less simulated. I feel like um, the more contemporary simulated effect that was also good was Star Trek The Undiscovered Country. They end up in a Klingon ship where there's been like a whole bunch of murder and there's like floating Klingon blood that is also has, I think it's an early simulation as opposed to being animated. And I feel like maybe they went in and did some touch up in post for Event Horizon, but that felt like a simulated liquid.
it did. It felt like a physics simulation. And
Yeah.
that's what makes it kind of give it that realness. The
Yeah.
last
At the time,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you go.
At the time, physics simulations for liquid that had external bounding, like water droplets, sort of surface tension, were easier. Fire simulations were much harder, and I think that's where you're going next.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going next. And after this is all over, you'll have to remind me to suggest Event Horizon clips to Corridor Crew because I want to see the true special effects nerds react to some of these. But the fire effects. So obviously, Captain Miller's nightmare fuel is the person he left behind that got lit on fire and burned to death. And they really do light him on fire, and there's a way to do that safely. But in order to do that, you can't open your mouth, you can't open your eyes. They cover you head to toe in this like gooey gel liquid that keeps you cold and not actually on fire. And so you can tell they do that, but at some point, that character on fire is looking at Miller and is speaking, but he's still on fire on his face. So what I think they're doing is they're lighting him actually on fire from like the bottom half. So you have real flames in the shot, and then you have comped in flames, like flames they just captured from objects, and that's comped in on top of him so that they're able to have him speaking and have his eyes open. And I thought the blend of those things was really, really well done because you can't, like even today you see like modern TV shows doing CG fire and it's just like, that's not real fire, that's CG fire. But in this instance, it's pretty damn believable for 97. Just like across the board, pretty damn believable anyway.
Corridor Crew was talking recently about that idea that fire is so hard that what they've actually found a lot of success doing in a lot of films that have lower budgets is filming fire and then comping in real fire and adjusting it, as opposed to simulating fire, because simulating fire still takes so much particle effect simulation that just filming a whole bunch of fire and comping it to look the way you want is easier. And
Somehow.
that sounds crazy still. The CG has gotten so far, but real fire is still so much better, even if you're just comping it in.
Yeah,
So,
I think it comes
this
down
looks
to
good. This
I think
looks
it comes down
modern
to,
good
like,
because it's still so hard.
oh yeah. What it comes down to is like, what can your eyes identify as fake, and then like in the end, real fire is still real fire. So if you can manipulate real fire into looking like it's on something rather than simulating fire and having it be on something, you obviously go with real fire.
Yeah. Coolest line. What was the coolest line for this one? I know you love this part, so
Yeah, I had already said it once, but it's when they're forced to abandon the Lewis and Clark and like forced onto the Event Horizon. One of the crew members is just like, "There's no way I'm getting on that bastard. We don't even know what happened to it yet." And Weir's like, "It's better than dying." Yeah, that to me is like ultimate irony. Even if this was my first watch, it's like, no, it's not. Obviously, it's not. This is a horror movie. There was Latin earlier, guys.
yeah. The coolest line to me has to be the Latin, right? No, I just don't have a coolest line in this movie, and we both agree on the coolest near death in this case, being poor Justin getting sucked out of that airlock.
Oh yeah. If
that was
if we're
so
going,
good.
If we're going coolest near death, I think it's definitely Justin. Just the effects they did on his face, the blood coming out, the veins. Like, I don't know if that's like a practical effect where they put like a patch over you and pump liquid through a vein and that makes it bulge, or if that was like CG effects, but it felt visceral. And I really like that.
I think at some point we need to. So I know we want to do the Apocalypse trilogy, but I think we need to look at The Thing, and then The Thing, which is the prequel to John. But there's also apparently a whole bunch of test footage of that. They shot that whole movie practical and then had it replaced with CJ. And the practical
Really?
looks amazing. We'll have to look at clips of that. Like, my personal review for this movie, Event Horizon. I love Event Horizon. I feel like this movie deserves the cult status it has. And I would have loved to have seen the Anderson extended cut, which they tried to bring to life and couldn't. Honestly, get a decent animation house on this project and remake it shot for shot with the same actors as voice actors. Add in the missing scenes with the original cast. And I would demand that you take my money. Sam Neill is excellent as always. As a nerd, somehow both in and out of his element, like in Jurassic Park and The Mouth of Madness. He's like the suavest nerd a lot of the time. Lawrence Fishburne again plays the guy you want on your side during a weird sci-fi situation, which he's been playing since he's debuted in Pee-wee's Playhouse as Cowboy Curtis, because that was a weird sci-fi situation. The cast, the mood, the visual effects, the entire design conception are spot on. It's not quite Blade Runner, the perfect movie, but it's tight. If you want to be scared and are willing to risk some extremely confusing erotic horror nightmares, check this out. I rated a 7 of 10 overall, although sometimes I'm in the mood where it's a 10 of 10. Let's watch Event Horizon. Like I said earlier, I have a problem.
So for me, I by no means enjoy this movie, but I do recognize that it has its place in the sci-fi horror genre. The only reason that the movie is watchable for me is because I choose to see it as a prequel to the 40K universe, as many fans see it that way. I'm sure they enjoy the movie baseline a little bit more than me. But my enjoyment of the 40K universe keeps me rooted in what I'm watching. So I think that's what makes it enjoyable for me. It certainly impresses the viewer with its use of visual effects. As for the time, full CG, space effects, models, liquid animation, and objects were not commonly used to great effect, where I do think this movie strides greater with those things. If you enjoy extremely gory existential horror, then it's the movie for you. If not, it's probably an easy skip. But if you do see yourself loving the space horror genre, I would at least give it one watch. For me, it's like a 5.5 foot deep in the pool out of 10.
Yeah.
Not quite there.
So that said, if I were going to recommend one space horror movie, it is still Aliens.
Oh, for sure, it's Aliens.
So
Wait.
as for wrapping,
hold on. Did you say Alien or Aliens?
Aliens.
Oh,
If I'm only going to recommend one, it's Aliens.
I see.
I feel like, yeah, it's unpopular right now.
No. I disagree because I don't think Aliens is a space horror. I think it's a space action, and Alien is a space horror.
See, I feel like your
It could be both. but,
floor,
like,
your floor for horror is higher than a lot of people, but your ceiling for horror isn't equally high. Does that make sense? I
sure.
feel like a lot of people are going to find Aliens horror.
Well, I mean, it's certainly scary, but like I think the main element is sci-fi and action. You know what I mean?
I agree, but if I was only going to recommend one, that probably means you're not going to watch a lot of space horror, so I might as well not make you poop.
Sure.
Yeah. If you were going to watch several of them, Alien is one of them.
Yeah, I think the Thing is also well, are we saying space horror or sci-fi horror?
Space horror.
Okay, so the Thing is not a space horror, but
No. Yeah, if we're going to watch one sci-fi horror, it's probably The Thing. I watched the video earlier today that was trying to tell me that Terminator 2 was sci-fi horror, and I was like, no. Like, I got their point. Eventually,
sci-fi
like, I was like,
action.
okay.
See, that's another example where the first movie I would consider a sci-fi horror movie, and the second one I would only consider a sci-fi action movie.
Yeah, and I don't consider the first one a horror movie at all. I like it as a sci-fi movie. Sci-fi movies can be scary. Like, robots are scary, yeah. Like, we've all seen the Boston Dynamics robot. Like, that thing's terrifying. Although I want to ride the big one, so. Like...
but tell me, who doesn't want to ride the big one? I think we're nearing the end of our episode. Shawn, did we want to talk about what might possibly be next on the episode list?
Yes. Let me get my completely analog planner. And look, I'm thinking we had decided that we were going to look at doing not a trilogy of movies, but 3 movies that are going to go together and maybe help us round out this portion of our space horror inspired lives. At least temporarily. There's tons of these awesome sci-fi space horror movies that are great to talk about because they look good. They have great set design. There's stories behind them. There's themes. They're not necessarily popcorn movies. But I think we were going to look at Apollo 18, followed by Life, followed by Sputnik.
Yep, sounds right.
So for those of you playing along at home, if you want to check out Apollo 18, that should be coming. We should be filming at the end of next month, at the end of March. We should be looking at Life at the end of April and Sputnik at the end of May. Pop in, leave some comments.
Yeah.
This is going to get pulled, edited, stuff moved around, things tightened up a little bit, be available on YouTube. And they should also be available back to the podcasting formats eventually soon. We were having a problem with TLDR, a user problem. I'm not bagging on BuzzFeed, on Buzzsprout. This is my own thing. And that should be coming along soon. Anything you want to add, Dan, for the upcoming coming alongs?
No, I'm pretty excited because we're about to hit a movie I really haven't seen. So Apollo 18 is going to be a fresh watch for me, so that'll be nice. I have seen Life and Sputnik, but I know you haven't seen Sputnik, so that'll be a good fresh watch for you. And I
And I think
do
Life I
think
watched recovering from surgery, so I don't remember.
so fuzzy then. So, and
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've seen Life too, but I think this will really round out the space horror alien genre.
Hmm.
And then we'll be able to jump into some other really cool, interesting,
Yeah.
movie
I
archetypes.
think for the summer we should keep it fun and light. I think that'd be good.
Move away from the space terror for sure.
At least for a while. And then I think that there is a whole other genre of science fiction that would be nice to touch upon, where you're looking at like retrofuturism. Like cool anime inspired fight scenes, good stuff. Like
Mhm.
that might be neat too to check
Yeah.
out.
I mean,
Anything that could have made a good manga. I'm in.
yeah. So I think that's it. Thank you all
All
for
right.
watching. For those of you who have watched and tuned in, keep an eye out for the posting of this episode to YouTube. That'll be edited down to a more reasonable, less ranty, less going off topic version, but all the same good stuff. And then we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe here on YouTube, and also check out our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Patreon to keep up with our content.